Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Mission Attainment, Incorporating Pollution Reductions from Energy Efficiency in State Implementation Plans, brought to you by the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, or ACEEE. Before we get started today, I'm going to run through a few housekeeping things. First, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So with any questions, we ask that you type them into the chat box, and particularly for questions for each of our presenters, if you can type them in as you think of them. We will then hold all those questions until the end of our presentations, until the last 15 minutes or so of the hour. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be posting the recording on ACEEE's YouTube page, and the link will be sent out to all webinar registrants as well. So first, a little bit about ACEEE for those of you who are unfamiliar. ACEEE is a 501c3 nonprofit founded in 1980. We conduct research and analysis and act as a catalyst to advance energy efficiency policies, programs, technologies, investments, and behaviors. And we work at the federal, state, and local levels to advance policies and programs, and have also expanded to focus on international work in recent years as well. And in early 2017, ACEEE launched our Health and Environment program with a team dedicated to helping people understand how energy efficiency affects our health, both indoors and out. And that is a team that I am a part of, and that has also brought you today's report, which we are going to be highlighting. So first, I will introduce each of our speakers today. I'll give you a bit about their background, and then I will, and I should say, my name is Cassandra Kubes, who's speaking. I will go and present first, and then we will move through the other presentations. So first, a little bit about my background. As I mentioned, I'm part of ACEEE's Health and Environment team. I conduct research, analysis, and outreach on opportunities for energy efficiency to reduce air pollution and improve public health. And I educate decision makers on strategies to advance efficiency policies and programs through federal, state, and local governments. So after my presentations, we'll be hearing from Robyn DeYoung, who is an environmental specialist with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Robyn has over 10 years of experience working towards keeping the air and water clean. She regularly works with state and local governments to assess and communicate the environmental impacts of energy efficiency programs and renewable energy projects. She also develops regulations and guidance for including emission reductions of energy efficiency and renewable energy to meet Clean Air Act regulations. And Robyn led the development of EPA's tool called AVERT, which helps users estimate the air emissions of energy efficiency, solar, wind, and other clean energy programs. And after we hear from Robyn, we'll be hearing from Nancy Seidman, who's a senior advisor with the Regulatory Assistance Project, or RAP. Nancy has more than 30 years of experience in environmental and energy policy. She works with RAP's U.S. team to advise policymakers, advocates, and other utility sector participants on the intersection of environmental and energy policies, focusing primarily on climate change, air quality policy, and the benefits of energy efficiency. And prior to working with RAP, Nancy worked for the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection for more than 20 years. And most recently, she was the Assistant Commissioner for the Bureau of Air and Waste at Mass DEP, where she managed 3 divisions and represented the agency on the Mass Energy Efficiency Advisory Council. And prior to that, Nancy worked for the US EPA in the New England Regional Office and for the Northeast states for Coordinated Air Use Management, known as NESCOM. So we have a great set of speakers today, and I am going to dive right in to the first presentation, going over our newly released Mission Attainment report that was released yesterday. So first I want to talk to you about the role of energy efficiency as an air quality improvement strategy. Energy efficiency is a least cost strategy for reducing multiple pollutants simultaneously by decreasing the amount of fuel burn at power plants. states can use energy efficiency as a strategy to help reach or maintain attainment with National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS, or to proactively reduce emissions to avoid initial non-attainment designations. The US EPA's NAAQS set limits on 6 criteria pollutants that are harmful to public health and welfare, and states are required to develop state implementation plans, or SIPs, which are comprised of a set of emission reduction strategies and regulations that states will implement to either attain or maintain the NAAQS. EPA designates states with air pollutant concentrations above the NAAQS limits as in non-attainment areas, and these states must meet added stringency requirements through their SIPs to reduce air pollutant emissions in specific geographic areas. And states that meet the standards are in attainment and must take steps to maintain this status. And the air quality benefits of reducing pollution from power plants with energy efficiency really extend throughout the country. However, the exact location of these reductions depends on several factors, including the complexity of the electric grid, the location of power plants, and wind patterns that can carry pollution from one place to another. And the emission reductions in SIPs need to be geographically targeted to reduce pollutant concentrations in designated areas. And NAAQS non-attainment designations require that SIPs demonstrate pollution reductions that will show up at air quality monitors in those locations. So state air officials need to understand the location of reductions to rely on energy efficiency as a strategy for NAAQS compliance. And helping states to understand and assess this challenge is actually the basis for this analysis contained in our mission attainment report. And the analysis identifies which states can implement energy efficiency measures to achieve the greatest localized pollution reductions for inclusion in a SIP. So I want to talk a little bit about some more background of the NAAQS and EPA's advanced program. So first, looking at the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS, I mentioned that those regulations regulate 6 criteria pollutants, as you can see listed here. And our analysis focuses on the last 3 pollutants: ozone and its precursor, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, particularly PM 2.5, and sulfur dioxide. And many states have areas that are in non-attainment for several existing NAAQS. The report looks at the latest designation status as of September 30th of 2017. And as of that time, 37 states and 1 territory had areas in non-attainment for more than 1 NAAQS. And in addition to the NAAQS SIP schedules, states already meeting the NAAQS may develop and submit plans that help to avoid future non-attainment designation. So EPA's advanced program provides an opportunity for states to reduce emissions ahead of designations. And participants in that program must meet a set of eligibility criteria to join, and then they must regularly submit voluntary plans to EPA detailing how the state will reduce NOx, nitrogen oxides, or particulate matter to get at reduction in ozone or PM. And states can use energy efficiency as a low-cost way to help reach or maintain attainment with NAAQS or to avoid those initial non-attainment designations. So now getting into the meat of our analysis within our mission attainment report. We performed this analysis to help state air officials and other decision makers understand which states can best employ energy efficiency to reduce pollution in the same geographic locations as currently or anticipated non-attainment areas for NAAQS and areas participating in EPA's advanced program. So we conducted this analysis in 4 different steps. So the first step, we used EPA's AVERT tool, which stands for Avoided Emissions and Generation tool. And this is an emissions quantification tool developed by EPA, which we'll hear more about from Robyn in a couple of minutes. And we evaluated the avoided power plant pollution that energy efficiency can achieve using this tool. We preliminarily identified 32 states where energy efficiency has the potential to reduce certain criteria pollutants, those 3 pollutants I mentioned on the last slide, required under NAAQS. And then we determined the potential for each state using the results from AVERT. So I want to pause there and talk about the modeled NAAQS obligations. So those met 3 different criteria. One was areas that are in non-attainment for EPA NAAQS as of September 30th, 2017. The second criteria, areas currently in attainment but participating in EPA's advanced program for ozone and/or PM. And the third criteria, areas with monitored data that exceed the 2015 ozone NAAQS requirements. And we use EPA's ozone mapping tool to determine which areas were likely to be in non-attainment for the 2015 ozone NAAQS requirements, but those designations are still forthcoming. So if an area met one or all of those set of 3 criteria, then we match that up with energy efficiency savings. And we determined that there were 32 states that met each of those criteria with energy efficiency savings occurring in those exact locations using the AVERT tool. So from that, we couldn't move forward with all 32 states in an in-depth analysis. So because that was beyond the scope of this effort. So we limited it to an in-depth analysis of 5 states that we selected, and those included Illinois, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Texas. So moving forward with those 2 states, we then followed steps 2 through 4. So for step 2, we developed low and high energy saving scenarios. And for the high savings estimate for each state, we used EPRI's state-level electric energy efficiency potential estimates from 2017. And the low savings represent an amount of energy efficiency that states are currently pursuing through utility energy efficiency programs. And I should say the high savings represent what EPRI estimated is economically achievable across multiple sectors if each state were to ramp up current savings. And those savings, both the high and the low, represent savings in 2020 from measures put in place 2016 onward. And for the third step, we entered this range of low and high energy efficiency savings estimates into the AVERT tool for each of our 5 states and determined the amount and locations of the pollutants that could be reduced by energy efficiency. And for our 4th step, we then identified the specific geographic areas in our 5 states where 2 conditions are met. A modeled NAAQS obligation exists, and energy efficiency savings are occurring for a set of 3 pollutants. And the results that we came up with indicate that savings from energy efficiency can be a significant contribution to a SIP depending on the state's obligations. And the potential reductions from our scenario on a ton per day basis are comparable to those from non-energy efficiency measures that states are relying on to demonstrate compliance currently. So now I'm going to run through some of the results from the states that I mentioned. And first I want to put up this map of step 1 of our analysis, where we identified 30 states where energy efficiency can help meet NAAQS obligations. And those were the set of 3 criteria that made up those modeled NAAQS obligations that I mentioned earlier. And so just to reiterate, these are states where locations of modeled NAAQS obligations coincide with pollutant reductions stemming from energy efficiency. So this is showing that there's opportunity that exists in 32 states for energy efficiency to help states with their SIPs. And now going into the individual state results. So first we'll start with Missouri. The map here shows the specific counties where energy efficiency resulted in pollution reductions for modeled NAAQS obligations throughout Missouri. And as you can see here, our energy efficiency scenario, the low and high scenario, resulted in multi-pollutant reductions in 5 geographic areas throughout the state, including 2 overlapping areas with Illinois. And Missouri could incorporate efficiency as a compliance strategy to help meet NAAQS for SO2, PM2.5, and ozone, including the 2015 ozone NAAQS. And here are our results for Ohio. Again, the location of the pollution reductions from the energy efficiency scenario is shown here in the Ohio map. And in our energy efficiency scenario, it resulted in multi-pollutant reductions in 3 key geographic areas throughout the state. And we're showing that Ohio can incorporate energy efficiency as a compliance strategy to help meet NAAQS for SO2, PM2.5, and ozone, including the 2015 ozone NAAQS. And here are our results for Pennsylvania. Our scenario resulted in multi-pollutant reductions in 11 geographic areas throughout the state. And we are showing that Pennsylvania could incorporate efficiency as a compliance strategy to help meet NAAQS for SO2, PM2.5, and ozone, including the 2015 ozone NAAQS. And here is for Texas. Our efficiency scenario resulted in multi-pollutant reductions in 14 geographic areas throughout the state. And we are showing that Texas could incorporate efficiency as a strategy to help meet NAAQS for all 3 of the pollutants, SO2, PM2.5, and ozone, including the 2015 ozone NAAQS. And it can also help with obligations under the ozone and PM advanced program. And here are results for Illinois. And what I wanted to do here was include a table from the report, and actually each state has its own table that looks like this, but I only included it for Illinois here. But if you're interested in the actual details of how many tons of pollutants and which pollutants and which areas these pollutants are being reduced, we do have it all laid out and all of the details included in the report. And I should say, while tried to keep the details minimal as to the details of the analysis in the presentation today, I don't know if I necessarily succeeded in that, but it is a pretty detailed analysis. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them today, and please type them into the chat box. But also, there's a lot more details included within the report, so we urge you to read that as well. But as you can see here, in Illinois, our efficiency scenario resulted in multi-pollutant reductions in 6 geographic areas throughout the state. And we think Illinois could incorporate efficiency as a compliance strategy to help meet NAAQS for SO2, PM2.5, and ozone, including the 2015 ozone NAAQS. And I want to talk a bit about energy efficiency, maybe for those who are not as familiar with the energy efficiency policies and practices happening throughout states. So this is our 2017 State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. ACEEE puts out annual scorecards every year. And this is just to show that energy efficiency is being deployed in every state across the country, with investments ramping up each year. And our scorecard tracks progress on energy efficiency policy and program offerings in states based on a criteria of 6 different areas of efficiency policies. And more than half of states have a long-term energy savings goal in place. And every state has some kind of energy efficiency programs that are operated by electric utilities or a third party. And there are a variety of non-utility programs and policies that save energy happening in states. And those can include building energy codes, appliance and equipment standards, energy efficiency, financing, among a variety of others. So the fact that energy efficiency is occurring in all states is great, but rather than taking credit for these activities in state implementation plans, many states are ignoring the air quality benefits that are coming from energy efficiency, and must therefore invest in other potentially unnecessary control measures for reducing pollution. So, we see there being a question, why are more states not taking advantage of the energy efficiency happening in their state toward their SIP plan? And so with that, we conducted a survey of air regulators to better understand why more states are not seeking credit for energy efficiency in their SIPs. And we received responses from 8 air regulators spread across the country, and the survey was non-random, but most of the respondents have areas that are currently in non-attainment for NAAQS. And we asked them to provide details on their state's experience and perceived barriers with incorporating energy efficiency in SIPs. And the results of our survey suggest that a variety of real and perceived barriers are hindering states' use of energy efficiency as a compliance strategy for NAAQS. And this hesitance is a real missed opportunity for states to reduce the cost of compliance with federal regulations and streamline regulatory efforts to tackle pollution. Here you can see listed here some of the results that we got from our survey. Included being unfamiliar with data sources for quantifying energy efficiency savings, lack of prior experience with incorporating efficiency in SIPs, the need for additional resources and staff training, and an inability to get pollution reductions in areas required for NAAQS. So that last one is really getting at the location issue. And based on the results of our survey of states and the assessment of opportunities identified in our analysis, we recommend the following steps to help states better incorporate energy efficiency to SIPs, as you can see here. So recommendations include developing tools that states can use to evaluate the impact that energy efficiency will have on a SIP compliance obligation. Also develop a streamlined EPA acceptable approach for measuring and documenting outcomes of energy efficiency to be included in the SIP, and then providing ongoing in-depth technical support to states looking to assess the potential role for efficiency in attaining air quality goals. And with that, here are a set of ACEEE resources, and these slides will be available along with our webinar recording in the week to follow. You can have access to those. And now I'm going to turn things over to Robyn DeYoung, who from EPA, who will walk through some of the tools and resources available to states. So Robyn, I'm going to turn things over to you now, and let us know when you're ready.
Okay, great. I am sharing my screen. Sorry, I need to get to my actual slides here. So hi, everyone. My name is Robyn DeYoung, and I work at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and I've done a lot with incorporating energy efficiency and renewable energy under the Clean Air Act, with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, the Clean Power Plan development in a couple of years ago, and quantifying the emissions, the criteria air pollutant, the greenhouse gas emissions, and understanding the public health benefits of those programs and policies. And what we've been hearing from stakeholders is that there's a growing demand to quantify the air quality and public health benefits of energy efficiency and renewable energy. I know today we're going to focus on energy efficiency, but both of those clean energy resources or zero emitting resources are valuable in so many different ways, and people want numbers associated with the investments that are being made and the progress that's being made across the country. And what we're hearing from environmental planners and public health organizations, departments of environmental quality, is that they're interested in addressing the local air quality, of course, meeting the national ambient air quality standards, and reducing health incidences, whether it's asthma or premature deaths from criteria air pollutants. Public utility commissioners that we're talking to and the energy efficiency program administrators have told us that they want a comprehensive assessment of the cost and benefits of the energy choices. The National Standard Practice Manual is one example that talks about having equilibrium of cost and benefits, and being able to show what those non-energy benefits are helps equal out the equation. And then green banking and the renewable and efficiency industry have been talking with us about demonstrating the public health benefits, showing those in actual dollar values for all the investments that they're making. Connecticut Green Bank is one example of that. And we actually just talked to a healthcare industry who's doing a lot of energy efficiency upgrades, and they want to talk about the health benefits. There's a lot of investors that are investing in the renewable space, and they really want to show how their investment is helping public health and lowering emissions. And EPA is uniquely positioned to provide this information. We are a public health agency. We develop free and accessible tools that others can use that have been peer-reviewed and are credible and have been benchmarked against other gold standard models. And AVERT, the Avoided Emissions Generation Tool, and COBRA are the two tools that I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, the graphic on the bottom here explains how you can use AVERT and COBRA together, but you can also use AVERT and COBRA independently. But this is something that you could think about doing on your own if you really were interested in getting both the emissions and the public health benefits of energy efficiency or renewable energy. This is what it looks like. You'd think about, well, what energy efficiency projects am I implementing or have I implemented in the past? Maybe there's an energy efficiency resource standard that the utilities have been saving a lot of energy through there. You would put the kilowatt hours and the megawatt hours into the tool, or if you had a renewable energy scenario, it would be the megawatts of the installed capacity. And AVERT is able to take those energy savings and convert that into the county level changes in NOx, SO2, and PM2.5. If you're thinking about public health benefits from criteria air pollutants, it also has CO2 emissions. Or at the state level or the regional level. But what COBRA needs, the COBRA is our co-benefits risk assessment, health impact screening and mapping tool. That tool needs to have county level information. So AVERT produces the county level information that's compatible with COBRA. COBRA will take emission reductions and at the power sector, as well as any sector that's in the National Emissions Inventory, and it has a reduced form air quality model in COBRA, and it will give you the county level monetized PM2.5 related public health benefits, and there's maps and tables and screenshots so you can communicate those benefits. And I'm going to go through each of those tools in detail so that you understand how to use it, how easy it is to use, and what type of information you would need to get the results that you want. So first about AVERT. AVERT, this is a spectrum of emission quantification methods, and AVERT is in the middle. It's an intermediate approach, and it's more sophisticated than eGrid. eGrid is a wonderful database of generation emissions of practically every power plant in the US. And it's great for inventories, and it does have an emissions factor that you could use associated with eGrid. That's one option. But it doesn't get you down to the county level. It doesn't get you down to the level of doing air quality modeling. So it's a good back of the envelope calculation. Then on the far right-hand side is the most sophisticated method out there, and that's energy modeling. Energy modeling projects out into the future based on economics and what the model might think is you can put different input assumptions into the model, like fuel prices, environmental regulations. It can look in cap and trade programs. So those are like your IPMs, your READ models, your Marcal, LEAP, ProSim. There's so many different models out there that looks out far into the future, like 20, 30, sometimes even 50 years. NEMS is another one that just came to mind. And they're great for far out future projections. Sometimes you need an energy modeler to run it. It can be costly. And so that isn't always an option for everybody. So AVERT was born because there was a need for something that anybody can use, that's an Excel-based free model, and it's a probabilistic model. What it does is it takes a historical year and it looks at how the generators operated in an AVERT region, and when there's lower demand or more renewable energy on the system, it figures out which are the units, which are the generators that would back down and not need to produce as much electricity because there's less demand from energy efficiency or other renewable energy resources that are displacing that. So the data sets in AVERT are from EPA's Air Markets and Program data. It's our Clean Air Markets Division collects this data. It's hourly and publicly available. And you can use AVERT to do a lot of different things. You can compare different energy efficiency scenarios, or even to wind or solar, because it has hourly profiles in there that you can use. Maybe you're looking at different programs and you want to see the difference between one or the other and how much emission reductions you get based on potential scenarios. You can look at state and county level emissions, so you can get all the way down to your state level, county level for all of these pollutants. And we have a lot of maps and tables in our Excel workbook. You can quantify the emission reductions for state implementation plans to meet the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. This tool is a approved tool to do that. And if you want to get air quality impacts, there's compatible outputs to CMAQ and our community model, scale model for air quality modeling, and our COBRA model that I'll talk about. Now, AVERT is not a projection tool, so you would need to know what you think the future might look like and put that through our statistical module to conduct an analysis more than 5 years into the future. For example, we're working with ERTAC, the Eastern Regional Technical Advisory Committee, and we're creating a way for them to look at their projections and put that into our AVERT statistical module so that they can do their own energy efficiency and renewable energy analysis and use that in any SIP demonstrations for states. So to use AVERT, all you need is megawatt hours, or you can convert the kilowatt hours you have into the proper units. And there's multiple options in the tool. These are the AVERT regions. We have 10 regions that are based on regional transmission organizations or independent service organizations, ISOs or RTOs, or even NERC regions. And we put these together so that you can look at a regional impact of energy efficiency and renewable energy, because a lot of electricity power comes from multiple different units. Just like air quality modeling is regional, power sector modeling is also regional. And you need to locate your region wherever you are. You run the model, just like ACEEE did. We have an Excel-based version and we have a web-based version. Our web-based version, I'm super excited about this, is going to be out at the end of May. And I'm going to walk through that right now to show you how easy it is to use. You can also use, we have pre-generated avert emission factors, and that is all found at www.epa.gov/avert. So I'm going to now show you how to use avert. And there's 3 main steps. This is a prototype model that will be available at the end of May. You need to select your region. You need to set your energy efficiency, renewable energy impacts, and then you get your results. So let's pick, you can select any of these regions. Let's pick Texas because it's one of the smaller regions. This is basically ERCOT. And you select it, you know that it's there. You could also select it by scrolling your mouse. And you push set energy efficiency, renewable energy. The wind turbine tells you it's moving. And then you have a couple different options. You can look at reductions that are spread evenly throughout the year, or if you know there's a certain percentage reduction in some or all hours of the year, you can also do that. So let's do 20 gigawatt hours in Texas is just a sample example. That there's no real reason why I chose that number other than it's an easy one to use. And so I calculated what the profile looked like, and then you can get your results. You click on that, and it takes about a minute to get your results just because there's so much data that's processing here. So what the tool is doing right now online is it's pulling from all of the generators that were operating in 2016 and understanding, okay, which ones were on at certain hours of the day, of every hour of the day, and based on how they generated electricity and the emissions that came out, if there's lower demand now on the system, which of those generators are the ones that most likely will be backing down and not need to generate as much electricity because there's less demand coming from it because of energy efficiency and all the great investments that people are making. And here are the results. We have the generation at the regional level, which is like part of Texas, so it's the Texas region. We have the total SO2 emissions in pounds and NOx and CO2 and PM 2.5. CO2 is in tons, everything else is in pounds. And then you get these emission rates, and then you can scroll down here. You can look at, okay, well, there was actually a little bit of Oklahoma in that region, in the ERCOT region. Texas is getting this many reductions. And remember, this isn't all of Texas. This is just where ERCOT is. And then you can look at the state, and you can get these maps here. Or maybe you're curious about a county, and you can select a county. I'm not sure what would be a good county. This one looks like a good one. So you can see that it must be hot in Brazos County, Texas, because they're getting a lot of emission reductions in the summertime. And you can, well, I don't want to say a lot, but there's more emission reductions in the summertime than not in the summertime. So you can see how that plays into each of the counties. You can scroll. All of the counties that have the power plants will be available for you to view. So that's how you run the tool. It's very easy. You can do that in less than 5 minutes. And if I can share my screen without having to go back. Hopefully it's this one. Yes. All right. So COBRA. COBRA is the Co-Benefits Risk Assessment, Health Impact Screening and Mapping Tool. And this is a tool that estimates the air quality and economic value of the human health improvements. What it does is it quantifies the emission reductions. It has air quality modeling inside. It also calculates the change in health and outcomes and the monetized value of the health outcomes so that you can get all of that information in COBRA. And then here is a list of the health incidences that, and the we have economic values for each of these in COBRA, and these maps show you exactly where you can get the most reductions, and here's a link to get that. And then lastly, we also have resources like the roadmap for incorporating energy efficiency, renewable energy in state and tribal implementation plans. It's guidance that outlines the different pathways when you're doing a SIP, whether you're doing a baseline projection and you have on the books policies, or you want to have a control strategy approach, maybe there's the voluntary and emerging measures approach, where you just want to say that the energy efficiency is a voluntary measure, and that has its own different quantification and legal requirements or weight of evidence. And there's a decision-making hub. It was issued in 2012, and we're updating that with more EM&V information, of evaluation, measurement, and verification information, and this is where it's available right now. So here's more information and people who you can contact if you have more questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Robyn. And I'm going to pull up Nancy's presentation, make sure everything's set. Okay, so now we will hear from Nancy Seidman from the Regulatory Assistance Project.
Great. Hello, Cassandra, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Cassandra and ACEEE for the introduction and inviting me to participate. As she said, I'm Nancy Seidman with the Regulatory Assistance Project. And RAP is composed of former energy and environmental regulators, and we assist state commissions and environmental agencies with best practices for today's electricity sector. Our services are provided free to state and local agencies. One of my focus areas over my 30-plus career as a public servant was to help air quality officials understand energy issues and energy officials to understand air quality. I'm lucky that my job at RAP allows me to continue to do that. Next slide, please. The Mission Attainment Report included 3 recommendations that I want to highlight, along with the work RAP is doing in these areas, and offer anyone on the phone a chance to pursue these with us. So those 3 recommendations were developing tools for states to evaluate the impact of energy efficiency measures on SIPs, and this is where EPA's real forte. To develop a streamlined EPA acceptable approach for measuring and documenting outcomes of energy efficiency programs for a SIP. And that is something that EPA, state and local agencies, and RAP can all work on together. Third, providing ongoing in-depth technical support to states looking to assess the potential role for energy efficiency, in attaining air quality goals. This is something RAP excels at, but also ACEEE and with EPA's assistance. And I would like to add that approaches that states and local agencies can use to incorporate energy efficiency into their everyday operations, which is something RAP excels at, and I'm going to focus on today. Next slide, please. So Cassandra mentioned this EPRI DOE report that was used as part of the analysis in Mission Attainment. It was published last summer, was the Electric Power Research Institute and DOE, demonstrating the potential, the vast potential of energy efficiency on a national scale, notably what can be achieved in gigawatt hours, and at a cost of less than 5 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the least cost option for generating electricity. So that's incredibly cost effective and important, and demonstrates our interest in fostering more use of energy efficiency, since many areas are using energy efficiency to avoid additional generation or using existing generation without considering all the pollution reductions that come along for the ride, all the pollutants. So how would you take these potentials identified in the report and translate them to air quality benefits? How can you translate gigawatt hours or into tons of avoided emissions? So I have 2 examples coming up. Next slide, please. So the first example takes 1,000 gigawatt hours as a starting point and estimates that you could get 750 to 1,000 tons reduction of nitrogen oxide from 1,000 gigawatt hours. This is work that RAP's John Chenot did using EPA's eGrid that Robyn mentioned, and based on emissions in Indiana and Washington. And I have a reference to that report at the end. But you can also explain this in 2 other ways that may make sense to you all. The first is in terms of number of homes for an annual electricity use. And second, the number of power plants that could be permitted with that number of tons. Using a permit that Massachusetts DEP issued while I was there in 2016, I estimated that you could get about 690 megawatt natural gas combined cycle power plants for those 750 to 1,000 tons. So a significant effort. Next slide, please. And a second example, translating energy efficiency potential into tons, using EPA's AVERT tool, as Robyn just talked about. And Robyn actually did the work to come up with the tons that are in this graphic. Thank you, Robyn. She did this for all 10 AVERT regions, and I have that spreadsheet if anyone is interested. But I wanted to show how the potentials that were estimated for 2020 in terms of megawatt hours in 3 of the 10 AVERT regions. And you can see the bubbles on the sides that represents the tons, which are significant. And you might ask, well, why are the numbers so variable amongst the 3 regions that we chose? And that's due to the type of fuels that are used there, the controls on the power plants, and the amount of electricity that's used, as well as obviously the size of the region. Next slide, please. So given all this potential for emission reductions, what options and strategies does RAP see available for linking energy efficiency and air quality? What's in our toolkit, if you will? So we released a paper in October of 2017 with a number of strategies to consider. None of these are silver bullets for solving air quality compliance, but they offer a number of ways to reduce emissions at very low cost while benefiting consumers and important industries in each of your areas. Next slide, please. So here are some of the ideas and areas we're working on, which can provide you with ways to use energy efficiency in your permitting and planning programs. And I'd be happy to discuss any of these further with you. First one is NSR offsets, new source review offsets that can be created by reducing energy use on-site at an expanding facility or working with a nearby facility that has or a part of a supply chain with an industry to replace equipment, demonstrate reduced energy use. And obviously, to meet the NSR requirements, you'd need to demonstrate that the reductions are quantifiable, surplus, enforceable, and permanent. Another option would be the 5-year regional haze compliance demonstrations and demonstrating, for example, reduced energy use in the baselines for electric generating unit forecasting. And another would be avoiding designation of a non-attainment through programs like Ozone Advance, working again with energy to demonstrate that energy efficiency has reduced the need for electric generating units or other industrial facilities. I've talked about these strategies in a number of places around the country and have had interest in all of them. And I'm happy to hear from any of you who are interested in talking about them more. Next slide, please. So here's the second set of options. Cassandra asked me to focus on permitting, and many of these options would allow you to provide assistance to facilities you regulate, reducing costs and emissions at the same time. And new source review obviously is another type of these options. Since air quality agencies work with all shapes and sizes of facilities, anything from gas stations and dry cleaners to data centers and major industrial facilities, all these areas could use help with energy efficiency, or you might want to work with specific facilities in your area, pick a sector that's of particular importance to your state's or local area's economy. For example, North Carolina a few years ago was working with their furniture industry, providing energy audits and demonstrating benefits in cost and emission reductions. Places like New Jersey or Texas that have refineries in the chemical industry could work with those industries or within the supply chain of smaller facilities who could benefit from energy efficiency and technical assistance. Next slide, please. So let me go to a particular example of a technology and how you might look at this in permitting. Think about boilers and the number of you might permit in your agency in a year. Is it 50, 100, or 1,000? What might be some options for those? Next slide, please. So here are some examples of how to improve boiler efficiency using energy efficiency. The first few might be considered capital expenses that would deliver larger reductions in fuel used and emissions avoided, but also for higher expense. Others might be more like operation and maintenance options that you could use at a facility, and again, reduce the fuel used and avoided and end up avoiding emissions. You could also build asking questions about these issues into your permit reviews, since it's obviously easier to be more efficient if you start when you're first permitting a unit. And I'm wondering if training on any of these areas would be helpful to any of you, and I'd be happy to hear about that. Next slide, please. And here's some other ideas for permitting. In particular, I wanted to mention energy audits and the fact that EPA's Boiler MACT standards required energy audits as a condition of Boiler MACT, though not necessarily implementation of results of those audits, but something that could be thought about for other facilities. And you may be aware of output-based standards in terms of pounds per megawatt hour or heat rate limits and setting operating conditions on a facility and as part of their permit. Next slide, please. Other ideas that we talk about in our 2017 paper are EPA's AVERT model, which Robyn so ably demonstrated this afternoon, as well as talking about the ERTAC model. And I was very pleased to hear that Robyn continues to work with states to incorporate energy efficiency into the ERTAC model, which I think would be a great way to help states quantify reductions from energy efficiency. Another thing that RAP is interested in is helping states look at their energy and air quality planning in a combined effort, looking at something like what the commissions call integrated resource planning, along with SIP planning, to ensure that you have joint goal setting and joint modeling that works together well and fosters communications across your agencies. And that's a process RAP calls eMERGE. Next slide, please. So I wanted to mention a number of resources that you may want to follow up on. The first link is to the 2017 paper that I mentioned. The next two talk about how to improve energy efficiency programs or quantify energy efficiency. And the last one is a reference to EPA's Boiler MACT requirements. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I hope all three of us had showed you that energy efficiency is a vast resource that can support many environmental improvements and provide compliance options for air quality, and that you and your agency can play a crucial and active role in bringing energy efficiency to your states and local agencies' permitting efforts. I'll close by mentioning again that RAP has funding to work with states on any of the ideas I mentioned if you're interested in pursuing them. So I encourage you to contact me further. My contact information is on the next slide. Thank you, and I hope we have time to take a few questions and have a discussion. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Nancy. That was really helpful, and thank you to both Robyn and Nancy for some great presentations that hopefully can give you all some more perspective and information on how to go about using energy efficiency as an air quality improvement tool. So we are going to jump into Q&A. There's some questions that have been coming through, so please feel free to continue typing those into the chat box as you think of them. And quickly before we get into the Q&A, I want to talk about another resource from NASIO, their energy efficiency pathway templates that you can find on the link here. And these are resources that facilitate state energy office and environmental regulator discussions for considering how energy efficiency can be used as in air quality management. And there are different templates that focus on state-specific examples of energy efficiency, as you can see listed here. And the point of them is to help to identify how energy efficiency can be used for things just like we were talking about today, for NAAQS compliance, for instance. You can take programs that are happening with state energy offices and help to facilitate the communication of those programs between energy and air regulators. And also wanted to highlight our upcoming conference on health, environment, and energy that's taking place in New Orleans in December. The link for the conference is listed there if you're interested in attending. Our abstract process has just closed, but we will be putting up some more information on content in the coming months, so we hope to see you there. And I will leave this slide up with the information from each of our presenters and jump right into Q&A. So the first question that we have is regarding some enforceability within a SIP. So Robyn, I'll put this to you. Does EPA consider or allow for energy efficiency as an enforceable action under SIPs? And what happens if an efficiency goal is not achieved?
Okay, great. So let's start with the hardest question first. Well, first of all, I'm not in the Office of General Counsel, and I also am not in enforcement. I do work very closely with the Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards, and the information that I'm going to share with you today is all in the roadmap and in some of the updates that we're planning to make in the roadmap, because what we've heard is that we need to be clearer on what happens if some of these policies don't take place. You know, there's maybe hesitancy and lack of confidence in that. So the way that you put energy efficiency in the SIP matters. There is your baseline projection, and there are a lot of assumptions that go into your baseline projection, right? There's your population growth. And if you get your population growth numbers wrong, that's not an enforceable action from what I know. You definitely, you think what you think how the population is going to grow, and you make your best assumption. When you look at your vehicles miles traveled and you think about the projections of how many vehicles are going to be on the road, that's an assumption in the baseline analysis. When you look at the demand, when you look at your demand of your future power sector and how much it's going to grow based on other assumptions like population or based on climate or based on other things, that is an assumption in your projections. And if you feel that you have well-established energy efficiency programs and policies in place that affect the demand forecast, and you put that in your baseline projection, then that's an assumption in the model that projects out to the future, and that affects your emissions. And you might not show that you have specific SIP credit because the demand is lower, but that can influence your demand projection. So that's one way to put energy efficiency in your SIP through your baseline projection. And if things don't end up working out, then those emission projections and policies and programs are not federally enforceable. So, but states, if the state or local or tribal agency fails to adequately implement or and fails to meet the attainment date, then you'll generally will have the same things that would happen otherwise if you either need to be redesignated or submit a new plan. Now, if you wanted to put energy efficiency in as a specific control measure and call that out, that becomes federally enforceable. If you wanted to put your energy efficiency in your SIP as a voluntary program and put it through the use the voluntary guidance document, then we suggest that you bundle as many different programs as you can and you put that all together as one. And so you might have higher performers and lower performers in terms of your energy efficiency program, and you need to have an EM&V plan and so that helps with certainty. And if the state doesn't actually materialize the energy efficiency savings when you check back, then you have to figure out how to make up for that. And then weight of evidence is not, nothing in the weight of evidence is enforceable.
Great, thanks so much, Robyn. And this next question is for Nancy. What equipment might be considered for energy efficiency upgrades?
Good question. If you can, Cassandra, can pull back up my slides. There's one with pie charts from Massachusetts where, based on some work, there we go, thank you. Based on some work we had done in Massachusetts with our Energy Efficiency Advisory Council, one of the consultants produced these two pie charts, one for electric and one for gas. And you can see, and I'm not saying every state is like Massachusetts, but at least gives you a sense of the types of equipment you might want to consider when you're looking at permits. Obviously, sort of, you know, I talked about boilers, but there's other things in terms of lighting and process cooling and compressed air, heating and ventilation equipment, combined heat and power. So these are sort of some of the common things: motors, drives, pumps, and fans, for example, that an agency might want to consider looking at when they're doing permit reviews. Hopefully that addressed the question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nancy. And another question, how did you choose your 5 states? And so that's talking about the 5 states that are in the Mission Attainment report. And we ended up choosing those 5 states based on the initial analysis that we did that showed that 32 states had areas where energy efficiency pollution reductions coincided with our modeled NAAQS obligations. And we chose 5 out of those 32 based on the potential for energy efficiency to reduce pollutants. So this is in sheer tons. There was a lot of potential in those 5 states, and also we wanted some geographic diversity with the states that we chose. So that's basically how we ended up coming down to 5. We also wanted to have a number that you know, we could dedicate enough time and resources to, but that wasn't, you know, going to be overly exhaustive for the report analysis. So we thought 5 was a solid number. But we do urge you to look into the report for some more details on each of those 5 states, and then also some more details on how we went about using the AVERT tool. I think Robyn gave a really good overview of how easy to use that tool is in her demonstration, and you can do a lot with it. So it's really easy to play around with and see, you know, using different amounts of energy efficiency, for instance, and seeing what it will get you. Okay, and Robyn, do we still have you on the line with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, great. So one more question coming through. Are there any tools available for quantifying the air quality benefits associated with upgrading natural gas-fired equipment, such as boilers, furnaces, or domestic hot water heaters?
Good question. So if the boilers from, I guess it depends on the size of the boiler. This is a little outside my scope of expertise, but if the boilers are permitted or a part of the national emissions inventory, we have it in our tool called COBRA. And if the PM 2.5 NOx and SO2 emissions are estimated, the emission reductions are estimated from the boilers being used less because they became more efficient, then you could put those into COBRA and figure out what the air quality and monetized health benefits are from that. But I'd have to double check and just make sure that that source category is in COBRA and if that is a part of the national emissions inventory. So those are kind of the assumptions of if they are in there, then yes. Otherwise, I'd have to find out another way, which I could always work offline with whoever's asking that question.
Okay, great, thank you. And we have another point that's talking about, this will be the last question and then we'll wrap it up, but it's more of a comment. Energy efficient buildings also have lower emissions from appliances using fossil fuels, and wondering if that was considered within the analysis. And I should say, as far as the emission attainment report is concerned, we considered reduction in pollutants from power plants, from fossil fuel power plants that were modeled through AVERT. So it didn't get down to the building level, but hopefully you were able to hear some more about other opportunities for energy efficiency through Nancy's presentation. So with that, I would like to thank Robyn and Nancy for providing some great information to us today, and hopefully you all took away a lot of good details about how to go about incorporating energy efficiency as an air quality strategy. And please feel free to reach out. I'll put up our information here. Reach out with any more questions. We really appreciate you joining the webinar today. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will be posting the recording of this webinar on our YouTube page. So stay tuned for an email about that with a link. So thank you all very much.